The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal and floating platforms. Ambassador Zerethal of the Vrin Collective stood before the assembled representatives with his 4 arms crossed in clear displeasure. Behind him on the massive holographic display floated an image of Earth, a blue and green world that looked far too violent for civilized space. Another petition from the humans, Zethal announced, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones of his species' natural disdain. They wish to join our council and accept all terms of membership. The chamber filled with various sounds, clicks, whistles, harmonic tones, all expressing different degrees of doubt. Counselor Mirasith of the Ethereum Concordat leaned forward on her floating throne. Her translucent form shimmered with curiosity mixed with concern. Have they reviewed the kinetic weapons ban? She asked. All of it? Zerthal's eye stalks rotated in what his people considered a shrug. They claimed to have studied every clause, every subsection, every historical precedent. He brought up another display showing human military forces, primitive by galactic standards but numerous and apparently very aggressive. These creatures come from what they call a death world. Their planet has killed them in every way imaginable for millions of years. They evolved through constant warfare with their own environment and each other. The kinetic weapons ban had been the Vizdi galaxy's greatest achievement 2,000 years ago. Projectile weapons had nearly destroyed 17 species in the Cascade Wars. Bullets, missiles, railguns, MASS drivers, all had torn through shields and armor with devastating efficiency. Treaty that followed banned all self-propelled kinetic projectiles, all explosive accelerants, all electromagnetic launchers. Energy weapons became the standard. Plasma, lasers, particle beams, these could be controlled, limited, and most importantly, defended against with proper shielding. Technology melee combat had returned. To honor duels between species, war still existed, but casualties had dropped by 70%. Why do they want to join? Asked Counselor Vex, his insectoid mandibles clicking rhythmically. What do these humans offer that we need? Zerthal displayed a star map showing humanity's small cluster of 15 colonized worlds. They control several jump points we need for faster trade routes to the outer spiral. And they have discovered a new form of quantum processing that could revolutionize our computing systems. They're primitive but not stupid. The debate continued. For 3 standard hours, some counselors worried about letting such a violent species into their peaceful union. Others argued that humanity was too weak to pose any real threat. Finally, the vote came. Humanity would be accepted on a probationary basis. They would receive all the benefits of council membership, trade access, technology sharing, diplomatic protection, but they would also face a test. The council assigned them a disputed border zone near Carthene Empire space. If humans could hold that territory without violating the weapons ban, they would prove their worth. If they failed, well, the galaxy would lose nothing important. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Chun of the United Earth government stood in the same great hall. She was small compared to most galactic species, barely 1.5 meters tall. Her black hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her dark eyes studied everything with careful intelligence. We accept all terms, she said in clear, firm tones. The translation matrices carried her words to every species in their own languages. We will honor the kinetic weapons ban completely. We will establish our colony in the border zone as requested. We will prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars. Zerl watched her with his eye stalks. There was something about this small human that made him uncomfortable. She smiled too much, not the nervous smile of someone overwhelmed by the grandeur of the council, but the smile of someone who knew a secret. You understand, Zerthal said slowly, that the Carthene Empire considers that territory their ancestral claiming ground. They will not welcome your presence. They are known for their aggressive enforcement of territorial disputes. Chun's smile grew slightly wider. We understand completely. Ambassador Zerathul, humanity did not survive our own world by being unprepared for conflict. We know exactly what we're walking into. The signing ceremony took place with all the traditional rituals. Each species had their own way of marking agreements. The Vrin pressed their palm marks in bioluminescent ink. The Ethereum sang harmonic seals into crystal matrices. The humans used an old-fashioned pen, a strange, primitive device that left permanent marks untreated. Paper Chun signed her name with a flourish. Behind her stood three other humans in military uniforms. They looked calm, almost bored. One of them, a tall man with scarred hands, was reviewing something on a small data pad. Zerthal noticed. He seemed to be studying weapon specifications, but the man's smile suggested he wasn't worried, just interested. Your colony ship departs tomorrow, Zerthal informed Chun. The Council expects regular reports on your progress. And remember, any violation of the kinetic weapons ban will result in immediate expulsion and potential military sanctions. We have sensor satellites throughout that region. They will detect any banned weapons technology. Chun bowed slightly. A human gesture of respect. We would never dream of violating the treaty. Ambassador, humanity is committed to following both the letter and the spirit of galactic law. The way she said it made Zerathel's skin ripple with unease, but he couldn't identify why. The treaty was clear. Humans had signed it. What could possibly go wrong? 3 months later, the colony of New Adelaide had been established on a pleasant world the humans designated as New Australia. The settlement held 15,000 colonists, farmers, engineers, scientists, and a full battalion of the United Earth Colonial Guard. The Carthene had been watching. Their scouts had been observing from just outside the system. Studying the human defenses, the humans had erected walls, actual physical walls of metal and composite materials. They had sensor arrays and communication towers, but most puzzling, they had almost no visible weapons, no plasma batteries, no particle beam emplacements, no missile. Silos Commander Kreth of the Carthene Empire studied the intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed in the red light of his command ship's bridge. These humans are fools, he chittered to his tactical officer. They build walls, but have nothing to defend them with. Perhaps they thought their reputation would scare us away. His mandibles clacked in what served as Carthene laughter. Prepare the assault force. We take the colony at dawn by their planet's rotation. Show the Council that giving territory to weaklings has consequences. Carthene fleet dropped from hyperspace. At the edge of the New Adelaide system, 12 warships carrying 3,000 warriors in full combat armor. Their armor had been designed specifically to disperse energy weapons. Plasma would splash across its surface. Lasers would reflect and scatter. They were the most feared ground combat force in 3 sectors as the landing craft descended toward the human colony. Kreth felt the familiar excitement of impending battle. He would crush these humans quickly. Then the Council would have to renegotiate the territory assignment. The Carthene Empire would claim what was rightfully theirs. What Kreth didn't know, what none of the Carthene knew, was that inside New Adelaide's walls, Captain Maria Rodriguez was giving her final orders to the Colonial Guard. Remember your training, she said calmly. Range markers are set at 50, 100, and 200 meters. Pick your targets, aim for center mass, and show these aliens why you don't mess with Earth. around her. 300 human soldiers took their positions along the walls. Each one carried a weapon that would have looked familiar to a human from 1,000 years ago, but would look utterly alien to any species in the galactic community. They carried bows. The dawn on New Adelaide painted the sky in shades of purple and orange. Commander Kreth stood at the front of his assault formation, his armor reflecting the strange alien sunrise behind him. 3,000 Carthene warriors stood ready and perfect. Their armor gleamed with the confidence of soldiers who had never known defeat. Forward. Kreth chittered through his communicator. The Carthene advanced in a standard assault pattern, shields overlapping. Weapons ready. They expected plasma fire from the walls. They expected particle beams cutting through their ranks. They expected desperate energy weapon fire that would splash harmlessly across their specialized armor. What they got was silence. The humans stood on their walls, completely still. Kreth's tactical officer, Tleth, scanned the human positions with growing confusion. Commander, I'm detecting no energy weapon signatures, no plasma capacitors charging, no particle beam focal points, no laser targeting systems. There, just standing there. Kreth's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Perhaps they planned to surrender without firing a shot? It would be the smart choice. The Carthene continued their advance. 50 meters from the wall, then 40, then 30. Captain Rodriguez stood calmly on the central tower, watching the alien warriors approach through her tactical display. He raised one hand. Every soldier along the wall responded instantly, lifting their weapons into firing position. The bows varied in design. Some were traditional recurve bows made of advanced composite materials. Others were compound bows with pulley systems that allowed humans to hold massive draw weights at full draw. Still others were crossbows mounted on tripods, their steel limbs capable of storing tremendous mechanical energy. Range 30 meters. Rodriguez announced calmly. Fire zone designated red. Knock arrows. 300 human soldiers each placed an arrow against their bowstrings. These were not the simple wooden shafts of ancient Earth. Each arrow was a precisely machined piece of military technology. Tungsten carbide tips designed for maximum penetration. Ceric composite shafts that could survive immense acceleration forces. Stabilizing fins made from advanced polymers. Some arrows had depleted uranium cores for extra mass and penetration. Others had diamond-tipped broadheads, designed to create maximum wound channels. Draw. Rodriguez commanded. 300 bowstrings pulled back. The compound bows clicked into their let-off positions, allowing the archers to hold draw weights that would have been impossible otherwise. The crossbows were already cocked and loaded, their steel limbs bent with enough force to punch through starship hull plating. Kreth watched the humans lift their strange devices. His tactical computer analyzed the movements. Commander, those appear to be primitive projectile launchers? Pre-space flight? Technology. They use mechanical energy storage to propel small projectiles. Threat assessment, minimal. Our armor will easily deflect such low-velocity impacts. Kreth almost laughed. Were the humans really this desperate? Using weapons that belonged in a museum? Continue advance. He ordered. All units, prepare for melee range. Apparently these humans want to die with their ancient toys in hand. Rodriguez dropped her hand. Fire! The sound was like nothing the Carthene had ever heard in battle. Thunk, 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 thunk. 300 arrows launched simultaneously. The compound bows sent their projectiles downrange at over 100 meters per second. Crossbows fired with even more force, their bolts traveling at nearly 200 meters per second. The arrows were subsonic, but barely. They crossed the 30-meter gap in a fraction of a second. Kreth's shields remained inactive. The Carthene shield technology was designed to detect and respond to energy weapons or high-velocity projectiles from explosive propellants. These Arrows were moving too slowly to trigger the automatic defense systems. They were kinetic, but not kinetic enough to register as threats. The first wave of arrows hit Grith heard the impacts. Dull, heavy sounds like someone striking metal with a hammer. Then he heard the screaming. The warrior to his left, Treth, staggered backward with a tungsten carbide arrow completely through his thorax. It had entered through the front armor plate, punctured both his major organs, and exited out the back. Rith collapsed, his limbs twitching. Another warrior beside Kreth fell with an arrow through his optical cluster. Broadhead had split his head into 3 pieces all around Kreth. Carthene soldiers were falling. The arrows punched through their armor like it was made of fabric. The energy-dispersing plates that could shrug off plasma bolts offered zero protection against solid penetrators. The specialized coating that reflected lasers did nothing to stop tungsten tips. Moving at hypersonic speeds, shields. Kreth screamed into his communicator. "Raise shields! Why aren't the shields engaging?" His tactical officer, Tleth, was already dead. An arrow through his communications array and into his central nervous system. The shields flickered on across the Carthene formation, but they were designed for energy weapons and high explosive projectiles. The arrows simply passed through them. The shield generators didn't even register the projectiles as threats on the human wall. The archers were already knocking second arrows. The process took 3 seconds for the fastest shooters, 5 seconds for those with heavier draw weights. The crossbow operators were reloading with practiced efficiency. Crank the string back, place the bolt. Aim, fire, second volley. Rodriguez commanded. Target the officers. They're the ones with the decorative armor plates. Thunk, 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 thunk. Another wave of death flew from the walls. Krith saw his command staff falling around him. His tactical coordinator went down with an arrow through her vocal chamber. His logistics officer collapsed with 3 arrows in his body. The archers had targeted him simultaneously. Himself felt something punch into his left shoulder. The pain was incredible. Unlike anything his species had experienced in modern warfare, energy weapons cauterized wounds instantly. These arrows created massive trauma channels that bled profusely. He looked down and saw a ceramic shaft protruding from his armor. The broadhead tip had cut through everything and was now lodged in his internal organs. Retreat. Kreth tried to scream, but his vocal systems were damaged. He triggered his personal communicator with his remaining good arm. All units, fall back to landing craft. Full retreat. This is Commander Kreth. We are withdrawing. The Carthene warriors needed no encouragement. They were already running behind them. More arrows fell like deadly rain. The humans weren't firing in volleys anymore now. Each archer was shooting as fast as they could reload. Some of the compound bow users were managing 10 arrows per minute. The crossbows fired slower, but each bolt was instantly lethal to anything it hit. Krith stumbled toward the landing zone, his blue blood leaking from multiple wounds around him. The Carthene army was in complete disarray. They had lost over 400 warriors in less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Against primitive weapons that shouldn't have been able to scratch their armor. As Kreth's landing craft lifted off, he managed to activate his emergency transmission array. His superiors needed to know what had happened here. Command, this is Kreth, he gasped. The humans use arrows, like ancient, primitive weapons. But they're not primitive. They pierce everything. Our armor means nothing. Our shields don't detect them. They're killing us like we're unarmored civilians. His vision was fading. The blood loss was too severe. Tell the Empire. Kreth whispered. Tell them the humans are more dangerous than we thought. Tell them these apes from Earth have found a way around our defenses. Tell them. Kreth never finished his sentence. Died in his command chair as his ship fled the system on the walls of New Adelaide. Captain Rodriguez surveyed the battlefield. Carthene bodies lay scattered across the field, her own casualties. 0, she activated her communication link to Earth Command. Mission successful, she reported. The Carthene have been repelled with extreme prejudice. Enemy casualties estimated at 400 plus. Friendly casualties, none. Ammunition expended, approximately 2,000 arrows. Requesting resupply of broadhead and armor-piercing munitions. She paused and allowed herself a small smile. Also recommend we prepare for escalation. Something tells me the Carthene are going to come back with more ships, and we're going to need bigger bows. In the Galactic Council's observation post, 3 light years away, Ambassador Zerthel watched the battle footage with something approaching horror. His aide, a younger Vrin named Kelser, was reviewing the technical readouts. Ambassador, the humans technically haven't violated the treaty. Bows use mechanical energy storage, not propellants or electromagnetic acceleration. They're kinetic weapons, but not banned kinetic weapons. Shirthel's eye stalks rotated in distress. This changes everything, he whispered. If humans can do this with bows, what else have we overlooked? What other primitive weapons could devastate our modern defenses? Kelser didn't answer. Neither of them had an answer, but across the galaxy, the Carthene Empire was about to find out. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of the new Adelaide incident. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Hall. There are various forms of agitation filling the chamber with sounds, colors, and pheromone signals. Supreme Commander Varkith of the Carthene Empire stood before them, all his massive form. Nearly 3 meters of chitinous armor and battle scars dominated the speaking platform. The humans have committed an act of war. Varkith's voice boomed through the translation matrices. They have used illegal kinetic weapons to slaughter 400 of my warriors. They have violated the spirit, if not the letter, of our sacred treaty. The Council must intervene immediately. Ambassador Zerthel raised one of his forearms with respect. Supreme Commander, our preliminary analysis suggests the humans have not technically violated. Not technically? Varkith's mandibles clacked with rage. They killed my soldiers with metal projectiles. How is that not a kinetic weapons violation? The doors to the Great Hall opened. Ambassador Chun walked in calmly, flanked by 2 human legal experts and 1 military advisor. She wore a simple gray suit that looked almost comically plain compared to the elaborate formal wear of the other species behind her. Holographic displays carried her legal documentation. Honored Council, Chun said, her voice steady and clear. Humanity wishes to address the accusations made by the Carthene Empire. Counselor Miraseth gestured for her to approach the central platform. Please explain. Ambassador Chen, explain how arrows are not kinetic weapons. Chun nodded to her legal expert. A thin man named Dr. Marcus Steinberg. He activated a massive holographic display showing the exact text of the Kinetic Weapons Ban Treaty. Article 3. Section 7. Steinberg said in a professorial tone, quote, all parties agree to ban the development, manufacture, or deployment of self-propelled kinetic projectiles, including but not limited to bullets accelerated by explosive propellants, missiles using rocket motors, railgun projectiles accelerated by electromagnetic fields, and mass drivers using any form of external energy input. He highlighted key phrases in glowing text. Note the specific language. Self-propelled kinetic projectiles. Note the examples. Explosive propellants, rocket motors, electromagnetic fields. All of these involve adding energy to the projectile during or after launch. Chun took over the presentation. A bow, she said simply, stores mechanical energy in bent limbs or compressed springs. When released, this stored energy transfers to the arrow. No propellant burns. No. Electromagnetic field accelerates the projectile. No energy is added after the arrow leaves the string. It is purely mechanical energy storage and release. Varkas stepped forward aggressively. This is semantics. Word games. The intent of the treaty was to ban all projectile weapons. Steinberg shook his head. Actually, Supreme Commander, the historical records show otherwise. Another display appeared showing ancient treaty negotiations. During the original treaty discussions 2,000 years ago, the Vrin delegation specifically asked about melee weapons, throwing spears and slings. The council at that time ruled these were acceptable because they required physical strength and skill. They were considered sporting and honorable compared to automated death dealers. Bows fall into the same category. They require strength, training, and skill to use effectively. Councillor Vex clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. But surely primitive bows are not what the humans used? Our reports indicate these weapons penetrated advanced Carthene armor. Chine smiled. May I demonstrate? She gestured to her military advisor. Colonel Sarah Park stepped forward carrying a sleek black case. She opened it to reveal a compound bow made of carbon fiber and titanium. This is a standard United Earth Colonial Guard combat bow. Park explained, draw weight, 200 pounds. Effective range, 400 meters. The arrows are tungsten carbide tipped with ceramic composite shafts. Modern materials, ancient principle. She held up an arrow for everyone to see. The treaty bans certain technologies, not certain effects. We simply optimized a technology that other species abandoned millennia ago, while everyone else focused on energy weapons. We perfected mechanical systems. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some species saw the human argument as clever legal interpretation. Others viewed it as a dangerous loophole that undermined the entire treaty ambassador. Zerthal found himself in an uncomfortable position. His own legal experts had reviewed the human weapons extensively, technically, frustratingly, maddeningly. The humans were right. Bows were not covered by the ban. This sets a dangerous precedent. Councillor Mirasith said carefully, if we allow bows, what about catapults? Trebuchets? Ballista? Where do we draw the line? Chun's eyes gleamed. Those are all also treaty-compliant, Councillor, as are slings, atlatls, and various other mechanical projectile systems. Humanity is prepared to share these technologies with any council member who wishes to adopt them. After all, we believe in collective security. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. The entire galactic military doctrine had been built around energy weapons and energy shields. If mechanical projectile weapons made a comeback, every species would need to redesign their armor, their tactics, their entire defensive philosophy of ours. Compound eyes gleamed with anger. The Carthene Empire will not accept this mockery of justice. We will take matters into our own hands. If the Council will not punish the humans for their semantic tricks, we will. He turned to face Chun directly. The Empire is mobilizing a full battle fleet, 47 warships with 15,000 warriors. We will crush your pathetic colony and show the galaxy the primitive weapons cannot stand against true military might. Chun didn't flinch. That is your choice, Supreme Commander. But I should warn you, we've had 3 months to prepare since we first arrived. And we've been very busy in orbit around New Adelaide. The human warship HMS Longbow floated in silent readiness. Captain James Chun, no relation to Ambassador Chun, despite the shared surname, stood on his bridge reviewing tactical displays. His ship was unlike any warship in the galaxy, where other species mounted plasma cannons and particle beam arrays. The longbow bristled with what appeared to be massive mechanical launchers. Status report. Captain Chun ordered his tactical officer. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka studied her screens. All ballista batteries loaded and ready. Sir, springled launchers armed. Trebuchet. Systems calibrated for orbital bombardment. Magazine stocks at full capacity. 3,000 kinetic. Penetrators available. Chun nodded with satisfaction. The longbow and her seven sister ships represented a radical departure from standard warship. Designed instead of energy weapons that required massive power, generators and cooling systems. They used spring-powered mechanical launchers. Each ballista bolt was a 2-ton tungsten rod with minimal guidance fins when launched from a spring system compressed by the ship's power plant. These bolts achieved velocities comparable to railgun projectiles, but because they used mechanical springs rather than electromagnetic acceleration, they didn't violate the treaty. "Sir," Tanaka said quietly, "are we really going to fight an entire Carthene battle fleet with giant crossbows?" Chun smiled. "Not crossbows, Lieutenant. Ballista. There's a difference. Crossbows are for infantry. Ballista are for sinking ships." He pulled up historical Earth data on his personal display. During the ancient Roman Empire, ballista could throw a 60-pound stone over 400 meters. They could punch through wooden fortifications and sink ships. Now imagine that principle scaled up with modern materials and engineering. Tanaka looked at the massive launchers mounted across the ship's hull. Each one was essentially a giant bow laid horizontally, with steel limbs 30 meters long. The Carthene think we're primitives playing with sticks and stones. Chun continued. They're about to learn why humans conquered their own planet before we ever left it. We didn't survive Earth by having the best technology. We survived by making the most out of whatever we had on the Carthene homeworld. Supreme Commander Varkith addressed his fleet commanders. The humans have humiliated our empire with their tricks and clever words, but words cannot stop warships. Legal arguments cannot penetrate hull armor. We will show them the difference between surviving a ground skirmish and facing a true military force. His fleet was assembling in high orbit, 47 ships representing the finest military technology the Carthene had developed over 3,000 years of spacefaring civilization. Each ship carried advanced plasma cannons, particle beam weapons, and energy shields that could withstand sustained bombardment. Our analysts have studied the human weapons. Varkith continued. Yes, their arrows can penetrate personal armor, but warship armor is exponentially stronger. Their bows, no matter how well made, cannot generate enough kinetic energy to threaten a capital ship. This will be a short battle, his tactical coordinator Tevan projected. Fleet movement plans. We will enter the new Adelaide system in force. Orbital bombardment will destroy their ground defenses. Then, landing craft will deploy, and we will take the colony by force. The humans will surrender or die. Varkith. Mandibles clicked with anticipation. Send the order. The fleet departs in 6 hours. By this time tomorrow, New Adelaide will fly the Carthene banner. What Varkith didn't know, what none of his advisors had considered, was that humans had been launching projectiles into space since the Carthene fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Adelaide system in perfect formation. 47 warships arranged in 3 attack wings, a sight that would have terrified any conventional military force. Supreme Commander Varkith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. All ships report ready status. His tactical officer announced. Plasma batteries charged, particle beams online, shields at maximum. The human ships are holding position in low orbit around their colony. Varkith studied the enemy formation. 8 human vessels, each roughly the same mass as a Carthene heavy cruiser. They looked strange. Their hulls bristled with mechanical structures that seemed almost decorative. Only 8 ships? Varkith clicked his mandibles in amusement. They're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. All wings. Advance to engagement range. Target their orbital defense platforms first. Then the ships themselves. The Carthene fleet accelerated inward, closing the distance at 0.2 light speed. There, energy shields glowed with power as defensive systems came fully online on the HM's longbow. Captain Chun watched the approaching fleet with calm professionalism. Range, 200,000 kilometers and closing. Lieutenant Tanaka reported from her tactical station. They're moving in standard Carthene assault formation. Heavy ships forward. Carriers in the rear. Estimated time to weapon range, 6 minutes. Chun activated fleet-wide communications. All ships. This is Longbow Actual. Prepare ballista batteries for ranged engagement. Target priorities. Command ships first. Then heavy cruisers. Fire on my mark. His weapons officer, Ensign Martinez, made final adjustments to the targeting computers. Sir, the ballista are ready. Each bolt is programmed with terminal guidance and maximum penetration profiles. Springs are fully compressed. We're storing about 2 gigajoules per launcher. Chun nodded. The ballista system was deceptively simple in principle, but extraordinarily complex in execution. Each launcher used a spring made of metamaterial composites that could store tremendous amounts of mechanical energy when released. These springs could accelerate a 2-ton tungsten rod to nearly 8 kilometers per second. That was enough velocity to punch through almost anything, and because the acceleration came from a compressed spring rather than an electromagnetic field, it didn't violate the treaty. Range, 100,000 kilometers. Tanaka announced. Varkith smiled on his bridge. They're not even powering up weapons. Are they surrendering already? His sensor officer, Tekel, examined the readings more closely. Commander, I'm not detecting any energy weapon signatures from the human ships. No plasma capacitors, no particle beam focal arrays, no laser targeting systems. They're showing almost no power output except for basic systems. Varkith frowned. Some kind of stealth system? Or perhaps their weapons are unpowered. Regardless, prepare to fire at 50,000 kilometers on the longbow. Chun raised his hand. Range optimal. All ships, fire. 8 human warships released their first volley simultaneously. The ballista launches, 64 per ship. 512 total. Fired in a precisely timed sequence. The massive springs, uncoiled with tremendous force tungsten rods weighing 2 tons each, launched into the black. They looked almost beautiful as they flew. Sleek, dark projectiles with minimal guidance fins catching the light of the system's star. Carthene sensor systems barely registered them. Commander, detecting kinetic objects inbound. Tel reported. Velocity approximately 8 kilometers per second. Wait, that's too slow to be missiles or railgun rounds. Threat assessment. Minimal. Varkith shields didn't even activate a Carthene. Shield technology was designed to detect and respond to threats based on velocity and energy signatures. 8 kilometers per second was fast by planetary standards, but slow. For space combat, most missiles traveled at 20 to 30 kilometers per second. Railgun rounds could exceed 50 kilometers per second. These objects were barely worth noticing. The first bolt hit the Carthene cruiser. Warrior's Pride had struck at 8.2 kilometers per second, carrying kinetic energy equivalent to 4 tons of TNT. The tungsten penetrator punched through the forward shield, which hadn't activated because the threat assessment system deemed it unnecessary. It punched through the outer hull armor. It punched through 3 internal bulkheads. It punched through the ship's main power reactor containment field. Warriors' Pride exploded in a brilliant flash of blue-white light as its reactor went critical. Varth stared in horror as his tactical display showed the cruiser simply ceased to exist. What? 3 more hits registered. The destroyer's swift talon took a bolt through its command bridge. The crew section decompressed instantly. killing everyone inside. The heavy cruiser dominant force took 2 bolts, one through engineering, one through weapons. Both impacts caused catastrophic structural failures. Ship broke apart in a slow-motion ballet of destruction. Shields. Varkith screamed, "Ray shields!" All ships, evasive maneuvers. The Carthene fleet began to scatter, their defensive systems finally activating, but the shield generators were calibrated for energy weapons and high explosive missiles. They had never been designed to stop solid penetrators moving at relatively low velocities. The tungsten bolts simply passed through most shields without triggering a defensive response when shields did activate. They dissipated energy weapons beautifully, but they did nothing to deflect solid matter. Second volley incoming. Tel shouted another 500 bolts crossed the space between the fleets. The Carthene were trying to maneuver now, but capital ships couldn't dodge quickly. Physics didn't care about how advanced your engines were. Human targeting computers predicted movement and adjusted aim accordingly. More explosions blossomed across the Carthene formation. The carrier breeding mother took 4 simultaneous hits. Its massive hull, designed to house 3,000 warriors, simply couldn't withstand the kinetic trauma. It broke in half. Atmosphere streaming from the wounds. The battleship Emperor's fist managed to avoid a direct hit to vital systems, but 3 bolts struck its port side, tearing huge gashes in the hull. Dozens of compartments decompressed. Hundreds of Carthene died in seconds. Return fire. Varkith ordered desperately. All batteries target the human ships. The remaining Carthene vessels opened up with everything they had. Plasma bolts lanced across space. Brilliant streams of superheated matter particle beams drew lines of destructive energy laser. Batteries fired in coordinated pulses. The human ship's shields activated unlike Carthene shields. Human defensive fields were designed to handle both energy and kinetic threats. The plasma splashed across the shields and dissipated. Particle beams scattered. The lasers reflected at angles. Minimal damage. Martinez reported, "Shields holding at 92%. There. Weapons are optimized for energy-to-energy combat. We're not giving them the power signatures they're designed to counter." Chun allowed himself a small smile. Third volley. Target their command ships. Let's end this on New Adelaide's surface. Captain Rodriguez watched the space battle through telescopic sensors. The Colonial Guard had assembled on the walls again. Bows ready if any Carthene made it past the fleet. They'd get the same reception as last time. "Look at that," one of her soldiers said in awe. "We're fighting a space battle with giant crossbows. And we're winning." Rodriguez nodded. Never underestimate the power of good engineering and physics. Doesn't matter if you're shooting an arrow at a deer or a tungsten rod at a spaceship. Kinetic energy is kinetic energy. In orbit. The Carthene fleet was in full retreat. They had lost 19 ships in less than 15 minutes. Varkith's own flagship had taken damage to its propulsion systems. His tactical display showed chaos. Ships breaking formation, crews panicking. Entire sections of his fleet simply gone. "Commander, we must withdraw." Cal pleaded. "We cannot fight weapons we cannot defend against." Varkith wanted to argue his pride, his honor. Everything in his warrior culture demanded he continue the fight, but he was also a practical military commander, and this battle was lost. All ships. Emergency hyperspace jump. Scatter formation. Make your way back to Carthene space. However you can. The remaining Carthene vessels began charging their hyperdrives. Human fleet fired one final volley. 6 more Carthene ships exploded or took critical damage before the rest managed to escape. Captain Chun watched the enemy retreat on his tactical display. "Cease fire," he ordered. "Let Them go. They need to report what happened. Here. Tanaka looked at him questioningly. Sir? Chun leaned back in his command chair. This wasn't about destroying their fleet. Lieutenant, this was about sending a message. The Carthene will tell everyone what happened here. They'll describe how human weapons passed through their shields, how their armor meant nothing, how primitive mechanical weapons defeated advanced technology. He gestured at the retreating enemy. Ships. Fear is a weapon too. And right now, we just made the entire galaxy afraid of human ingenuity. In the observation post, Ambassador Zerathil watched the battle results with numb shock. His aide Kelser was reviewing the technical data, his eye stalks trembling. 28 Carthene ships destroyed or disabled. 0 human casualties. The humans fired approximately 1,500 projectiles. Success rate 94%. Zerathil couldn't speak. He had witnessed something that shouldn't have been possible. A backwater species with primitive weapons had just humiliated one of the galaxy's most powerful military. 6 months after the Battle of New Adelaide, the Galactic Council convened for what many species were calling the most important session in 2 millennia. The Great Hall was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every member species had come, along with observers from dozens of non-member civilizations, who wanted to see how the Council would handle the human situation. Ambassador Zertal called the session to order with visible reluctance. We are here to discuss what many are calling the human question. He announced, specifically, whether humanity's use of mechanical projectile weapons represents a spirit of the law violation of the kinetic weapons ban, and whether humanity should remain a member of this council. Councillor Vex stood immediately. I move that humanity be expelled from the council, and that all mechanical projectile weapons be added to the banned weapons list. The humans have exploited a loophole to circumvent our most sacred treaty. They have demonstrated that they care only for the letter of the law, not its intent. Several species voiced agreement with harmonic tones and clicking sounds, but others remained silent. Watching carefully, Ambassador Chun stood calmly from her delegation's platform. If I may address the council? Councillor Mariseth gestured for her to speak. Chun walked to the central platform with measured steps behind her. Holographic displays began showing data that made several species shift uncomfortably. The council seems concerned that humanity found a way to defend itself effectively. Chun began. Let me be clear. We did not exploit a loophole. We read your treaty carefully and followed it exactly. If the treaty's writers intended to ban all projectile weapons, they should have written that. Instead, they specifically banned self-propelled kinetic weapons using particular technologies. They left mechanical weapons legal. She brought up historical records. During the original treaty negotiations, your ancestors specifically discussed and approved the use of melee weapons and manual projectile systems. They considered these honorable and skill-based. We simply took technologies you abandoned and perfected them. Councillor Vex's mandibles clicked. Angrily, you're saying we should have predicted that someone would weaponize ancient technology? Chun smiled. Yes. Actually, that's exactly what due diligence means in treaty writing. But that's not why I'm here today. She gestured, and the holographic displays changed. Now they showed schematics, detailed technical specifications for various bow designs. Crossbows, ballista, trebuchets, and other mechanical weapons. Humanity is prepared to offer the Council a deal. We will share all of our mechanical weapons technology freely with any member species. Training programs, manufacturing specifications, tactical doctrine, everything. We'll help you defend yourselves the same way we do. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were intrigued. Others were insulted at the suggestion they needed human help. Ambassador Zerathil raised his arms for silence. You would share your military secrets? Why? Chun's expression became serious. Because the galaxy is not a safe place. Ambassador, the Carthene aren't the only aggressive species out there, and energy weapons have made everyone dependent on a single defensive paradigm. Your shields work brilliantly against energy weapons, but they're almost useless against solid projectiles. That's a vulnerability someone else could exploit if humans don't help you fix it. Counselor Mirasith leaned forward. You're saying you're protecting us? How generous. There was sarcasm in her tone. Chung met her gaze steadily. No. Counselor, I'm saying we're offering partnership. Humanity is new to the galactic stage. We're not as technologically advanced as most of you in energy systems, FTL travel, or medical science. But we excel at one thing: adaptation. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We survived by being creative, by using every tool available, by never assuming we had the best answer. She gestured to the assembled species. You've all been so focused on energy weapons that you forgot projectile weapons exist. You designed armor that disperses plasma. You created shields that deflect particle beams. But you left yourselves completely vulnerable to a tungsten rod moving at 8 kilometers per second. That's not your fault. You made rational decisions based on the threats you faced. But now you need to adapt, and we can help. The debate continued, for our species took sides, argued, negotiated. The Carthene delegation, led by a new commander after Varkith's resignation in disgrace, eventually stood. The Carthene Empire wishes to make a statement. The new commander announced, we have reviewed the battle data from New Adelaide extensively. We have studied the human weapons and their effectiveness. We hereby withdraw our objection to Human Council membership. Additionally, we formally request that humanity provide us with training in mechanical weapons technology. We will not be caught defenseless again. The admission sent shockwaves through the chamber of the Carthene. The species most humiliated by human weapons were accepting this reality. Then others had to as well. Over the next 3 days, the council worked on a compromise. The result was what became known as the Human Clause, an amendment to the kinetic weapons ban. New clause specified that mechanical projectile weapons with yields under 1 kiloton equivalent were legal for defensive and conventional combat purposes. This included bows, crossbows, ballista, trebuchets, catapults, slings, and similar systems weapons using explosive propellants, electromagnetic acceleration, or nuclear antimatter warheads remained banned. The vote passed with 78% approval. Humanity was granted full council membership. Ambassador Chun signed the amended treaty with the same old-fashioned pen she'd used 6 months earlier. Welcome to the council, Zerthil said formally. His eye stalks showed resignation mixed with grudging respect. Humanity has certainly made its mark on galactic civilization. Chun smiled. We're just getting started. Ambassador, 3 years later, the galaxy looked very different. Council Military Academy on the planet Sanctuary had opened a new department, Mechanical Warfare Studies. Young cadets from 24 species struggled with training bows in a large gymnasium. Most of them couldn't even draw the bowstrings back to full extension. A human instructor, a retired Colonial Guard sergeant named Torres, walked among them with patient amusement. No, he said to a young Vrin cadet whose forearms were shaking with effort. You're trying to use pure strength. That's a 150-pound draw weight. It's not about muscle. It's about technique. Use your skeletal structure to support the draw. Let your bones do the work, not your muscles. The Vrin tried again and managed to pull the string back halfway before his arms gave out. Tara's sighed. We'll get there. Remember, human children learn this when they're 8 years old. It just takes practice. In another part of the academy, advanced students were studying ballista engineering. An Etherium professor named Sheltos was explaining spring mechanics to a class of military engineers. The key insight the humans had, Shelto said, was that mechanical energy storage scaled better than we ever realized. We abandoned these technologies 2,000 years ago, when energy weapons became more efficient. But efficiency isn't the same as effectiveness. A plasma cannon requires a fusion reactor, cooling systems, capacitor banks. A ballista requires springs, a frame, and ammunition. Guess which one still works when your power plant is damaged? The students took notes with various appendages. This was the new reality of galactic warfare, not replacing energy weapons but supplementing them with mechanical systems. Redundancy had become the new military doctrine on New Adelaide. Now a bustling colony of 200,000 humans. Captain Rodriguez had been promoted to Colonel. She oversaw the planet's defense forces and served as a military consultant to the council today. She was giving a demonstration to visiting council observers, showing them the latest in human military innovation. This, she said, gesturing to a massive weapon mounted on a mobile platform, is what we call a compound ballista. It uses a pulley system similar to compound bow technology. This lets us achieve much higher energy storage in a smaller package. Effective range in atmosphere, 3 kilometers. Effective range in space, unlimited. Ammunition capacity, 40 bolts. Fire rate, 6 rounds per minute. The alien observers watched as her crew demonstrated the weapon, a tungsten bolt the size of a telephone. Pole launched into the sky with a tremendous crack. It disappeared from sight in seconds. Targeting. Computers showed it hitting a drone target 50 kilometers away. Incredible. One observer whispered, "And this is treaty compliant?" Rodriguez nodded. Completely legal, just like our ancestors used when they hunted mammoths 40,000 years ago. We've just scaled it up a bit. In the human section of the council's commercial district, a new business had opened. The sign read, Torres Tactical, Fine Bows and Combat Equipment. Inside, alien customers browsed displays of human-made weapons at Carthene. Warrior was examining a heavy crossbow designed for his species' four-armed physiology. This will punch through personal armor? He asked the human shopkeeper, a former colonial guard armorer named Liu, nodded. Guaranteed. That's a 400-pound draw weight with armor-piercing bolts. It'll go through anything short of ship plating. We can customize the grip for your hand structure. The Carthene made a clicking sound of satisfaction. I'll take 2. My squad needs to be ready. Across the galaxy, humanity had triggered what historians would